Good evening and welcome to Tell It. My name is Pablo Mars. I'm the producer and creator of the show, and I'll be your host this evening. That's enough for me. Thank you. Bye. Good night. No, we have a wonderful show for you tonight, and the theme is scary, creepy, weird. By the way, that is not my dating life, okay? Just wanted to let you know. That would be called something worse. All right. So anyway, tonight's theme was chosen quite a while ago. And it was before the world got really scary, really creepy, and really weird. Not that it ever has been anything else, really, if you think about it. But I know this is a tough time for a lot of people. And so I just want to thank you for coming here, because even though we're all scared and creeped out and weirded out, storytelling and the arts and coming together as a community to listen to stories and to share our common humanity is one of the most powerful ways we can overcome that feeling. So I just want to thank you all, because it just heals my heart and it's a salve for my soul. So thank you for being here. All right. We have a great show for you tonight. We have some fascinating stories. And I'm going to, first I should do some housekeeping. This is the restroom right here. Unfortunately, it's the only one we have. So during intermission, there'll be a line. So get there quick. Okay. All the refreshments and stuff will be out, during intermission and after the show if you want to hang out. All right. And if you have any interest in doing the show, please talk to me. Also, we have a mailing list out there. If you're not on our mailing list, please get on it. Our next show is December 16th. It's our holiday show, and we're going to have stories and a special musical guest. So, yes, Lady Gaga is coming to. I can ask her. Okay, so I'm going to start out tonight just with a short piece, and I don't know how many of you grew up in Los Angeles. Anybody? Yeah. LA natives represent. All right, so in LA, back in the mid-'70s and before, people used to get around very easily hitchhiking. It was pretty common to see people with their thumbs out on the street. Nowadays, you might end up in a refrigerator and chopped up in parts. Who knows? It's a much scarier thing. But back in those days, there were students, there were young adults, there were hippies who would put their thumb out for rides. And I would do it once in a while if I needed to, And the worst thing that ever happened was I would get picked up by some older gay guy who wanted to do something in exchange for the ride, what's that bumper sticker? Gas, grass, or ass. Nobody rides for free. So that was the situation. But one day I was going to work in Westwood, and I was living in Silver Lake. And I had to get there quickly because I was already running late. Didn't have a car at the time. So I went ahead, stuck my thumb out, and this car pulls up. These two normal-looking guys are sitting in there. Now, normally I would never get into a car with more than one person in it. But I had to get to work. And I figured, okay, the handles are still on the doors. I think I'll be okay. So I get in the car, and we start going down Sunset, towards the west, and they were going to go at least as far as Hollywood. Well, okay, that's fine. So we're driving along, everything's fine, and then I noticed that they're looking out the window and kind of yelling at stuff, and at people going by. And I went, okay, they don't live here, obviously. And then hearing their accents, I thought, okay, they're from maybe somewhere in the South, but I could tell enough that it wasn't just like Charleston or, Texas, someplace like that. No, this was Appalachia. So I thought, okay. So they're strangers to the city, and they're yelling things out and making jokes and stuff. I went, okay, as long as we get to Hollywood and I get out of this car, we'll be fine. We're driving along, and I noticed that there's a biker, on a 10-speed coming up behind us, or not behind us, but on the side of the car. And just as he approaches the window on the passenger side, passenger guy notices him, and he's kind of riding at the same speed because we're in traffic as we are. And then he starts to get ahead of us, and the guy leans out the window and he says, "Woo! Look at that ass! Yeah! Give me some of that! Pull up, pull up, pull up. I want to slap that ass." And I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to be in a scene from the movie Deliverance in a very short time. These guys are going to kidnap me and rape me. I don't know what's going to happen. So I get very nervous and I get very uptight, and I'm sitting in the back seat going, just get to Hollywood, just get to Hollywood. So they finally stop and they pull up to Las Palmas and Hollywood Boulevard. And I said, okay, this is great. All right, thanks, guys. And I start to get out of the car. He goes, wait a minute, we're going to go for a drink. I went, what? We're going to go for a drink. And I said, no. Look, I got to get to work. It's 11 o'clock in the morning. You know, I don't drink at 11 o'clock in the morning. So I got to go. But thank you very much and enjoy your trip. You know, so no, we want to get to know you. We want to go for a drink. And I said, no. That's okay. So I start to wiggle my way out of the back seat and onto the street, and the guy grabs my arm like this, and he says, "Come on, man, just share a drink with us. We want to get to know you." I yanked myself away from him, and I'm glaring at him. I'm thinking, you freaking hillbilly redneck, you're not going to touch me. You're not going to get me into a bar at 11 o'clock in the morning on a broad Hollywood street. What do you think this is? So I just said, "Hey, thank you very much," and I took off. I thought, what the hell did I just do? Putting myself into that kind of danger, that kind of a situation, Even if I could have taken these guys, who knows what would have happened? Who knows if they'd had a weapon, a knife, a gun, who knows? So I learned a lesson that I already knew. And had to go through it again, make sure I got it this time. So thankfully, nothing happened, and I got to work late. And, I never told anybody about the story because I would have just never heard the end of it. How I got into a car with two visitors from Appalachia and refused a cocktail. Who does that? Thank you. Scary. All right. Our first storyteller has been telling stories at curated shows in California and New York for the last 8 years. He can be heard on a number of podcasts, including Risk and Unheard LA. He is a Moth Story Slam winner and has a PhD from Cornell. He currently works part-time as a trust administrator, which is more interesting than it sounds, as he gets to spend a lot of time with families with good money and bad kids. In spite of it all, he would rather earn his living by writing and telling autobiographical stories. Please welcome, he's been here before and we're always glad to see him again, the lovely Stuart Jacobson.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the nice introduction, even though I wrote it myself, but thank you. Okay, as a present to myself for an upcoming landmark birthday, especially after the stress of scheduling a colonoscopy, I booked myself a weekend at an ayahuasca retreat. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with ayahuasca, it's a strong hallucinogenic compound extracted from a tropical vine. And it's been used both ceremoniously and therapeutically for over 1,000 years in the Amazon. And it helps people in their quest to identify and then cleanse themselves of their demons, or what we today might call remembered traumas. Now, it's an all-purpose purgative. And not only do you get an emotional and spiritual purification, but also works physically in that after taking it, you're very likely to vomit, and you have a good chance of getting diarrhea. And you also have a great odds of tripping your brains out. I chose this form of chemical treatment because I was sensing some blocks in my ongoing effort to hook up my smart to my energy, to be more creative. I wanted to focus better, to be more productive. And I wanted quick, nearly instant results because I'm getting old, very old. And I didn't want to spend several months going to weekly cognitive behavioral therapy sessions. I wanted to use this endeavor to see things from a different angle and hopefully better to center myself. Now, this is not to say that I had old traumas lurking in my subconscious. Far from it. Now, these traumas included the untimely death of my father, which left me handcuffed to a bitter, narcissistic, histrionic, overbearing, social climbing mother. And this was quickly followed by the near disappearance of an older brother who joined a religious cult. Now, I say near disappearance because more than once he would call my mother up to tell her that he was strongly considering leaving the group, but needed some cash. He had to settle some issues and then extricate himself. And before my mother would hang up the phone, she was practically out the door to Western Union, cash in hand. Now, for those tender youths in the audience, Western Union was a means to send money, a hardwired predecessor of Venmo. So when she soon realized that she was conned by him, I was there for her to be her emotional pincushion. And then there was an honored great uncle, a confirmed bachelor, who whenever he came over for dinner would roughhouse with the very young Stuart. And at some point, holding me very, very close as he rubbed himself to climax. Now, I didn't understand the particulars of this until much later, but I did express to my parents, albeit in a pre-adolescent inarticulate manner, the fact that I was uncomfortable with it. And this was met with deaf ears. So I can't rule out the roles that these ordeals may have played and continue to play in my ongoing practice of putting myself in my own way, of overanalyzing nearly every situation, including personal and professional encounters, so that I find that I'm repeatedly functioning more in my own head than in the room. But I'm always open to new experiences, especially those that are drug-related, of which I have had many, and many more if you count the flashbacks. So I did some extensive research and found a well-respected, high-end church that runs ayahuasca retreats all over the country. And they had one not too far away, just past Redlands off the 10. Now, these retreats aren't cheap. They cost about $1,000. And you've got to complete a physical and psychological health questionnaire and affirm that you're not going to die or even worse, freak out at the retreat. So I get there, I check in with the clipboard guy and directed to a large barn. Now, there were about 50 other people at the retreat, in addition to the shaman who leads everything, his staff, a bunch of volunteers, and a band. And the ceremonies take place in the barn, where they laid out mattresses for us with fresh bedding, paper towels, and of course, vomit buckets. Okay. Now, it was a controlled environment, and they took away our cell phones because they didn't want anybody making recordings, taking pictures, or calling up their exes to berate them over some trivial slight that occurred 1.5 million years ago. They also took away our car keys because very few of us would be in condition to drive. Now, the ayahuasca was presented in a ritualized ceremony, an 8-hour session, and there were 3 of them, one for each day of the weekend. And the band, which was wonderful, played nearly continuously. It was really magic. The shaman, he would prepare, bless, and serve the ayahuasca in a disposable red plastic cup, about the size of a double espresso macchiato. It looked like Dr. Pepper, had a gritty texture like Turkish coffee, and it tasted unimaginably horrible, like the drainage sludge from a Superfund cleanup site. You know, we stood in line to take it. Imagine parishioners waiting for communion in a Catholic chapel. So I swallowed my ayahuasca and then sat in my mattress. After a short interval, the drug kicked in. For everyone around me, they seemed to be reliving their traumas. They were hallucinating, they were vomiting, they were screaming, they were shouting, they were laughing maniacally, they were arguing with people nobody else could see, and they were crying. But I wasn't feeling anything. Okay? I was feeling nothing. No visions, no revelations, no emotions, and no nausea. Now, one woman had to be carried out of the barn after letting loose a stream of curses in Spanish, so emphatic and vitriolic that no translation was necessary. And she then poured a vomit bucket over herself. No shit, you know? So I'm sitting here thinking that not only did I spend a lot of money on this, but I also left the comfort of my family and friends for this weekend. For what? To spend it as a fly on the wall in what was fast becoming the waiting room for the next express train to hell? And also to prime myself for the ayahuasca, I had to do a major prep and cut from my diet most of my favorite things, including spicy foods, alcohol, and cannabis. And I had to stop taking my daily drugs and supplements, which really stung because this meant I had to give up my beloved old man boner pills. So there was a week of no morning glories for me, basically. This is the level of commitment that I gave to the process. And it was starting to hurt, and hurt bad, really bad. So the next day I took a double dose of ayahuasca. Again, I felt nothing, while everyone around me went to town on the drug, screaming, crying, and puking their guts out. And I was watching everyone, puke and weep and scream, and I'm thinking to myself, what's wrong with me? I just want to be like everyone else here. I want to be seeing the ghost of my father, my uncle, my mother, my brother, so I can unload on them. I can tell them about my rage, which was compounded with decades of interest. I wanted to be crying. I wanted to be shouting. I wanted to be vomiting. But I'm not doing any of these things. Now, there had never, ever been any time in my life when I might have thought, contemplated, considered, speculated, or dreamed that I could be in a situation where I'd be jealous of people who are crying, screaming, talking to phantoms, and vomiting out their guts. But here I was. Looking back, I realized I was probably lucky that I wasn't doing all that unpleasant stuff. Those people had to have been dealing with traumas much worse than a deceased parent, a difficult mother, a sociopathic brother, and a self-indulgent uncle. About this, I am definitely not jealous. I have ayahuasca to thank for this whole new perspective in life. So, for me, when it comes to creativity and productivity, I have learned that there are no quick chemical solutions. Just patience, diligence, discipline, hard work, and now and then, maybe a little bit of screaming and crying, but no puking. Okay, thank you.
Right. When I was in high school, my best friend and I, we said, we're not going to do any drugs, because we might have a bad trip. I don't want to do any marijuana, and we're not going to do any acid, right, until we're like 21. So a few months later, I ditched school during lunch and went with a couple of gal pals and sat under the Shakespeare Bridge in Los Feliz and smoked a joint, and then went back to school and felt amazing. And then, for graduation, for our grad night party at Disneyland, we dropped acid. So much for teenage vows. Don't you love them? Okay. But yeah, oh gosh, nothing on ayahuasca. What a shame. I've heard it's really something, but I'll stick with acid. Okay. Our next storyteller is a native Japanese. She's a Moth Story Slam champ and a mischievous storyteller with a knack for humor. Believe it or not, she majored in Swahili. Yes. Before diving into the world of programming, where she's not crafting narratives for machines, she delights in sharing her personal stories for humans. She will be featured at the Moth Slam Showcase this coming Tuesday. Please welcome, for the first time, the lovely Mio. Mio Yamauchi. You want to take this off?
December 11, 2021. A noise wakes me up. It's still dark out. I check my phone. 5 o'clock in the morning. The noise continues. It's not coming from the roof, so it's not squirrels. Is it cats? There are stray cats in my neighborhood. That's not it. Then I start hearing somebody mumbling. It's human! Is it my landlord? No, he usually calls or texts when he comes over. Besides, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. It must be an intruder. I live in a guest house, standing in my landlord's backyard, surrounded by a 6-foot wall. Behind the wall, there are trees and bushes, and the 10 freeway right behind. I've never seen anybody there, but my landlord told me that he's seen homeless people walking in the bushes before. So it could be a homeless person. I continue to sharpen my senses. I can feel him moving around the outside of the house. He must be checking the door and windows. My heart starts racing. Did I lock the door? Of course I did. How could I forget? In Japan, an intruder broke into my apartment before, but he was polite. He said, "Good morning." And I asked him to leave, and he did. But I don't think intruders in America are well-mannered like that. But I know what to do for a case like this. I watch Lifetime dramas. Not heartwarming ones, but more like cheesy suspense ones, like murders and betrayals. In Lifetime dramas, there are always those who chase the suspect, which is a stupid move in my opinion, because they always trip on something and get killed. I'm not one of those. I'm the lead character in this drama. So I locked the bedroom just in case. Should I hide under the bed like Lifetime dramas? No, I don't think so. I need to vacuum first. I don't want to get dusty. Besides, I have so much stuff under the bed. If I pull everything out, it's obvious where to find me, right? So instead, I cover myself with a bed sheet. I know it sounds silly, but hear me out. In Japan, we say the darkest spot is under the lamppost. So under the bed sheet could be the best spot to hide. Imagine who would think that anybody is hiding in such an obvious place. Yeah, call me a genius. Then suddenly, bam, bam, bam! I start hearing the loud bangings at the front door. Is he crazy? Isn't he supposed to sneak into the house quietly when the house is dark? Who is this guy? In Lifetime dramas, bad guys can be your coworker or ex. I'm a computer programmer. I know my coworkers are capable of breaking into my world digitally, but not in person. And climbing up the wall? Forget it. Then, is it my ex who ghosted me after dating for over 10 years? I thought he was dead. Did he rise from the grave? The banging still continues. Now I can hear my heartbeat too. Should I call my landlord? No, it's too early. So I text him. Sorry to bother you this early morning, but I wanted to let you know that we have an intruder in the backyard. Send. And wait. And wait. I don't see 3 dots are coming in. He's not responding. He must be dead. You know, in Lifetime dramas, some people have to get killed. Clearly, he's not the lead. Now what? Should I call 911? But in Lifetime dramas, when you call 911, it doesn't end well. you are either get killed on the spot or the police shows up way after everything is settled. So I Google when to call 911. Here is the first example, an event that involves immediate threat to a person or property. Screams, fires, gunshots, car accidents with injuries or any other medical emergency. I don't think my case fits here because he hasn't entered because I didn't scream. Oh, there is another example. An in-progress crime like fighting or breaking and entering. This is close, but not quite, because he hasn't entered my place yet. Oh, there is more. The banging stopped. See, I was right. It wasn't an emergency after all. The noise has become subtle and then gone. This happens a lot in Lifetime dramas. When the lead character thinks that everything is back to normal, surprise! The bad guy comes back to kill you. Now that silence returns, my imagination explodes. What was the point of making that loud noise? Maybe somebody got an accident and was seeking for help. Maybe he was injured. Or maybe he's dead from in front of my house. And I will be blamed for his death. But who would take an effort to come to my place? There are a bunch of houses that he can knock on without climbing up the wall. Maybe he killed everybody on the block. And I'm the last one standing. I'm the only living witness. Although I didn't see anything. Maybe he's waiting for me to outside of the door. I'm not gonna fall for it. I continue to play dead. I don't want to move. I can't move. My home was a safe place, but not anymore. A tall wall, a gate, don't mean anything. Silence continues. Hours later. Yes, I waited for hours. I finally unlocked the bedroom. I peeked through the cracked door. I don't see anything unusual. So I go into the living room. Everything seems in order. I look out the window. No blood or dead body. How disappointing. I see a squirrel stealing an orange. It's just another regular day. But I still feel anxious. How can I get rid of this anxiety? Oh, the hot water will help. So I jump in the shower, soaking from head to toe. The hot water is taking all my anxiety away. Now I can feel myself again. Wait, why did I do that? This is a perfect place everybody gets killed. Oh gosh, I'm not the lead character after all. Thank you.
That is terrifying. Squirrels eating oranges? No, that's good. Who here has been like robbed like that and from a house, in a house, someone breaking in, or you come home and you see it all? Yeah, it's the weirdest feeling. It's like total violation. But I'm so glad you're okay. Thank you so much. All right. Our third storyteller, she has found her forever home in storytelling. She's performed with Strong Words in LA, and she's a full-time homemaker and mother of two, aged 3 and 6. Nearly 7 years into her beloved West Coast life, she hails from Long Island, New York, and is a former Broadway child actor. High school homecoming queen, heavy metal radio DJ, and the best one, a dominatrix. Boy, they're into this scary, creepy, weird stuff, aren't they? She teaches hot yoga at 6:15 a.m. and has been practicing yoga for 23 years. Please welcome, for the first time here at Tell It, the wonderful Tammy Mugis.
Louis used to pick me up in his 1966 Chevy Biscayne. I'd be dressed up and waiting on the front stoop with my tiny little rainbow purse and heart sunglasses on, eager for my brother, 14 years older than me, so we could just go and ride around. It was the 1980s on Long Island. We hadn't lived together in about 2 years. He'd left the same night as my even older brother left. At 3, all I could remember was a commotion and a kitchen chair being knocked down, and then he was gone. And a few days later, his piano leaving the living room, and a truck took it, brought it down the street. No more chopsticks, no more heart and soul. And a few days later, Louis would greet me, "Hello, peanut brittle." He whisked me away to a world of old things. His collection of canister sets, depression glass, antique phonographs, radios, clocks, and of course, his piano. I was learning the oldies on the radio. There was Runaway by Del Shannon, The Sunny Side of the Street by Billie Holiday. Louis cared for me. He gave me glimpses of a world beyond what I knew. He made me wonder, and he always saw me. He always gave me all of himself in those moments that we shared driving. I got to see him living his orderly and clean life away from the literal mess at home. The apartment he'd gotten for himself, it was a clean and great first floor of an old boarding house. The boarding house was owned by Gary. I'm sure my brother paid next to nothing in rent, exchanged for his work as the super. He used to do the landscaping, make small repairs, and collect the rent from various men who lived up in rooms upstairs and paid by the week. So Gary was Louis' big brother now, as in the Big Brothers and Big Sisters of America. Our routine continued as I got through adolescence and I got to sleep over. He'd pick me up, we'd stop at Wallbounds for grocery shopping, and we'd get some cranberry juice, chicken nuggets, corn, anything easy and on sale, table talk pies, and then we walk across the street to the little video store, and I would beg to see Jim Carrey's Once Bitten one more time. We used to howl at Goldie Hawn and Meryl Streep in Death Becomes Her, snickering at the grotesque and dark hour about life and death. We shared a twisted sense of humor. At the house, I watched him balance his checkbook and fold laundry. These were things I never saw my mother do. We would delight in the scrubbing down of a bathtub to a sparkling clean. And I never realized the oddity of me being the person that was doing the heavy cleaning in my home. Downstairs, there was a workshop that Gary's dad, David, had as a workspace. David was Gary's father. I realized my brother, he'd been taken in by a good family when he was at risk. He'd made his breakout from the codependent domestic violence, which I was still housemates with. The boarding house had many hallways and partitioned office space. While Louis took a bath, I could explore the old rooms of Gary's chiropractic practice. Gary and his wife Eileen lived in the same town, not far away, with their 2 little kids. And so I had time to tinker around with all the equipment there, like the massagers. I was getting older, and I was looking for more stimulation. And I found it. So I came across this picture. It was an old black and white photo of a man with a beard. He was smiling, and he had clearly just ejaculated. The only porn that I had ever seen was big-breasted, oiled-up women. And this was a beautiful and natural picture. It was like a specimen from another world. I never mentioned my finding to my brother. Louis started doing really well when he began working as a microbiologist at a lab that did water testing. Our sleepover routines began with trips to the lab where he'd do something quick with the specimens and then we'd be out. The Biscayne became a brand new Volvo 240 with heated seats, and he bought a condo. He was still close with Gary and his family, and I'm pretty sure Gary helped my brother buy a small prefab house in Pennsylvania, Louis' retirement home. I was sold on his lifestyle of achievement and preparedness. Meanwhile, my parents were still living paycheck to paycheck. I learned Louis was gay, not because he told me, but because I don't miss details. He and his friend, Ed, took me to a Christmas tree lighting, and from the back seat, I saw Louis change the radio on Ed's car while Ed was driving. That's about as much intimacy that I ever saw him express to any partner. His boyfriends were always just his friends. I didn't push him to talk about it more than he wanted. Deep conversations came by way of Indigo Girls lyrics. He was an activist with a very short life. And his t-shirts, E. coli happens. Fight AIDS, not people with AIDS. And then there was the Les Miserables cast recording soundtrack. And Annie Lennox's Why. Louis was constantly singing his heart out behind the wheel. My brother, he was a divine diva behind the wheel in his own car. But outside of it, he just wanted to pass as totally straight. One night I picked up the phone to heavy breathing. Thought it was an obscene caller, and I hung up. The phone rang again, and it was Louis, who could barely talk. He was calling from the emergency room. Gary was dead. He'd had an embolism while playing soccer with his son. And the painful sound of my brother's voice, and watching him grieve Gary's death, I was sure that they were secret lovers. Not long after Gary's death, Louis' life became smaller. The Volvo became a Ford Escort. He never changed that one Sarah McLachlan CD, forever playing in it. He went ahead and he got himself a living guy, Robert, who sort of looked like Gary if you squinted. And yes, they were just friends. Through the years, I tried to keep our conversations alive, our connection. But Louis seemed too busy for me. I eventually called him toxic for refusing to help me stop Robert from buying my dad weed, who maybe could have lived to see the birth of my son had he stopped smoking. He'd had enough of me and my family activism. On a road trip back to California from New York, my mother called me and she said, "Louis is sick. I'm telling him to go to the hospital. Robert isn't helping him." I was already in Kansas, not even considering going back. I pulled out all of the songs that we used to sing together, fearful that there'd never be a reconciliation between us. After that, I spoke with him once more. The doctor said he would need his leg amputated. I asked, "Louis, what's happening?" "Hey, sweetie, I'm sick." I told him, "Please, trust the doctors. It's gonna be all right. Just go with the flow." And he said, "Oh, sweetie, I'm going. The test showed he had been taken over by necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria. My brother, the former microbiologist, died within a week of something that if he would have sought help immediately, it would have been a $5 prescription of antibiotics. I knew that Louis didn't die because he was gay, but I do think that his death had something to do with him living as a lifelong closeted person. He never wanted to draw too much attention to himself. We shared a deeper side of him when we were younger that didn't make it to the other side of Gary's death. He stopped singing loudly. He thought he could work nonstop to escape his grief. My mother told me his last words were, "I'm so sorry." Life is only happening in the present. It's only happening while we're belting our hearts out behind the wheel. There is no later. There's no future. When I get sad about the freakish circumstances of my brother Louis' sudden death, I close my eyes and I think about him and Gary, bodies intertwined with one another and just radiating out pure love. Thank you.
Thank you. Give it up. Ooh, boy. So many of my gay brothers and sisters, their lives become, in relation to their parents or their family, don't ask, don't tell. And it's hard. And when you lose them, like you said, that's it. There's no future. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. All right. Our next storyteller is originally from the East Coast. She is from a showbiz family. She decided to become a psychotherapist in order to deal with her crazy upbringing. Currently, she has a private practice in Hollywood and treats individuals, couples, and families. She's an addiction specialist who sees a lot of people in the entertainment industry. I wonder why. She recently acted in a film by Roxy Sorkin, where she played an outrageous, over-the-top grandma to Iris Apatow. Not a stretch. She's very excited to be performing at Tell It Again. She was here many, many years ago, and we're excited to have her here again. Please welcome the fabulous Michelle Weber.
I'll lower this first.
He's a doll.
You're a doll. Look at you. All right. Is that
Okay, I think so. Let's see. Yep,
good? Yep.
perfect. Okay, I'm going to give you this
Yes.
because it just falls anywhere.
I might steal this.
Hi. I'm so happy to be here. So, come with me as I whisk you back to the 70s, a time full of hope and horror, community and combat, peasant blouses and polyester leisure suits. We're inside the auditorium of the Unitarian Church in New Haven, Connecticut. I'm at the lectern observing a sea of 75 women. They are black and white, Asian, Latino, and all combinations therein. They were thin and plump, tall and tiny, funny and alarming, timid and tenacious, gay and straight, and they were angry and determined to try to halt the rampant injustices that were swirling around them on a daily basis. We became known as the New Haven Women's Liberation Movement. In the 70s, our goal was to make love, not war. I was wearing my go-to garb of army fatigues and work boots, designer army fatigues, with my hair looking like black feminist activist Angela Davis. The issues we tackled were safe and legal abortions, equal pay for equal work, gay rights, minority rights. We organized the Secretaries Union at Yale, and we flooded the streets of Manhattan marching against the Vietnam War. We did guerrilla theater throughout the streets of New Haven. I had a little daughter. She was the apple of my eye. I still do have a daughter. This is not about something horrible happening to my daughter, but something almost horrible happening to me. When my daughter was little, she was in daycare while I was trying to keep society from toppling, and it worked for a few minutes. Because it was the 70s, I was high most of the time. One afternoon, I planned to pick up my daughter from daycare, but I ran to the laundromat to throw in a wash first. I had my schedule down. Wash, dry, fold, pick up my kid. Simple, right? I parked my sunflower yellow VW Bug on the corner where Squeaky Clean Wash and Dry was. I saw a pig running towards me holding a gun in the air. Oh, excuse me, I saw a police officer running toward me with his gun in the air. We called them pigs then. Even though I was high, I knew the difference between a pig and a cop. So this police officer was chasing a young black man, shooting at him without a thought about other people he might hit. That's how some cops rolled in the 70s, you know. So I looked up and said, "Oh, hey, bullets," and proceeded to take my laundry into the Squeaky Clean. I mentioned I was high, right? The young man proceeded to run into the laundromat right behind me. I turned around just as he put his gun in my stomach. I could feel the barrel pressing into my skin. His hand was shaking, as was the gun. I don't remember feeling afraid, not of him. I recall thinking the gun might go off accidentally because of the shaking, and I was concerned that someone might accidentally get shot, me, which would add to his list of crimes. I remember thinking, should I tell him my schedule was wash, dry, fold, pick up my kid, and there was simply no window for be a hostage held at gunpoint by a young man being chased by cops? I also wanted to tell him that I was his ally. With his gun still in my stomach, he looked at me and said, "What are you looking at?" Oh, I nervously said nothing as I was looking down at the floor thinking, the floor is dirty. He then pulled the gun from my stomach and told us to lay on that floor. I laid down on that dirty floor along with 4 other people in the Squeaky Clean, and they were all crying. I didn't cry. I didn't have the chance to detail my political accomplishments to him, but I felt certain that had he known I fight for minority rights, he would know that I was on his side. Why, you might ask, was I on the gunman's side? Because he was young, very young, black, and very scared. All I could see when I looked at him were the circumstances that brought him to this moment. I'm sure that was partially due to the premium quality grass I smoked moments before. But the fact was that I had seen too many young black men brutalized by the police, and I didn't see myself as the victim in that moment. I lived in the protection of white privilege. I had a gun held to my belly once in my life. I have no doubt he feared being killed every day he walked out his front door. I don't know how long we were on the floor, but it was long enough for the SWAT team to arrive. If you're unsure of what SWAT stands for in New Haven in the 70s, it's stupid white asshole thugs. They surrounded the laundromat with big guns and big megaphones yelling, "Come out now with your hands up." The fuck? Them I feared. Meanwhile, Youngblood had already exited stage right without hurting anyone. We laid on that still dirty floor until we were ordered to crawl. Yes, crawl on the also dirty sidewalk, creating more laundry for me. To an empty storefront next door where the FBI had set up an office. Now, if you're unsure of what the FBI stood for in the 70s, it's fumbling blockhead imbeciles. I learned from one of those freshly shorn robots in a charcoal-colored suit that the kid had been part of a group that had robbed a bank, and instead of running out of the city, they ran in the wrong direction into the city. I was so bummed that they didn't get away with the robbery. Why, you might ask, was I bummed that he didn't get away with the robbery? Well, from where I sat, banks were Goliath, who took advantage of the impoverished and minorities, to which I assume our antagonists belonged, trampling them as if they were little more than weeds and waste. I was going to David that Goliath. Additionally, I was dealing with an unpaid student loan, and I didn't like the bank's attitude when I refused to pay. Rude. Needless to say, I didn't cooperate with the imbeciles that day, which led to a phone call several days later informing me they were coming to my house to question me. I told my best friend Terry, and we knew what to do. We feverishly pulled all the posters off my walls. I had huge, beautiful images of new marijuana plants and activist posters that said things like, "Off the pigs," "Women are not chicks," and "The only good cop is in the village people." We hid our pot in an empty planter on the terrace and sent our little girls upstairs. When those two crew cuts showed up with holstered guns, Terry said, "There are 2 little girls upstairs. Take those guns out of this apartment immediately." To our surprise, they did. Then the grilling started. How tall was he? What was he wearing? Had he shaved that morning? Was he well read? I don't remember the questions exactly. I was high. I shrugged and played the dimwit, answering every question with some sarcastic form of, "Look, I can't remember. I truly want to help you." Several days later, the New Haven Register said the FBI imbeciles referred to me as a hostile witness. If they only knew the depths of my hostility, they would have never come to my apartment. A few weeks later, I discovered that they found that young boy and they shot and killed him. Come back to the present with me now. You will see a kinder, gentler, wiser Michelle, who no longer has posters on her wall that say, "I'm not saying cops are racist, but they won't even drink black coffee." I've dedicated my life to helping people heal from their trauma, but I am so disappointed that the current political and societal climate is eerily similar to the long past times of young Michelle. We all have an allegorical gun being held to our bellies. Young Michelle would end with these pieces of wisdom. You can survive a gun to your belly if the trigger doesn't get pulled. Don't get confused about who to fear. Power to the people, off our backs. If we all had a bong, we'd all get along. And don't forget to do the laundry. Thank you.
Oh my God, that was so wonderful. So glad you survived.
I did.
All right, thank you. Woo! I was held up at gunpoint once, and the gun was right here in the face. And it was that same thing. It was like, I'm looking down, I don't see you, I'm not going to recognize you, I can't do anything. Well, the cops, finally came over and took a report, and they asked me, without saying anything about the suspect, "Okay, so were they black or Hispanic?" What? Those are my, I think one of them was even Latino. And those are this was in the 80s, here in LA. Those are my 2 choices? I felt like, no, they were a gang of Jewish women with pink hair. They were on some kind of vengeance trip. I don't know. It was bizarre. All right, so it's intermission. We're going to take a little break. And as soon as the bathroom line is done, then we'll continue. We have some great stories in the second act, so don't go away. Please help yourself to refreshments. Thank you. Welcome back. for the second half of the show. And just want to remind everybody, please sign up on the mailing list if you're not on it, so we can keep you posted about all the wonderful things that are happening. The holiday show's coming up December 16th, so we'd love to have you back for that. And then in 2024, we're going to start up again in April, because I only do a show once every other month, so we do about 5, sometimes 6 shows in the year. So we're going to start up in April, and we're going to celebrate our 10th year in existence. And the only reason we've been around for 10 years is because we have an audience like you. So your support has been so wonderful. Thank you. And the amazing talent that I've had the honor and pleasure to present over the years. So thank you again for being here, and we hope you join us again. All right, here we go. So this next storyteller is a dear friend of mine, and without his wonderful wine and martinis and hanging out on his balcony overlooking the city and his condo in Silver Lake, I would not have survived the George Bush administration or the Orange Baboons administration as well. So, I hope I didn't offend anybody politically, but his friendship, his generosity, his hospitality has meant everything to me. He is an actor, a sitcom writer, a college history professor, and the president of his homeowners association. Only the best for Tell It. Please welcome my dear friend Jim Kiley.
Yes, indeed. I am president of my homeowners association. I live in a 26-unit building, and I call this story the dead guy unit. I'll start with the first dead guy. One day a few years ago, my downstairs neighbor, let's call him Ken Wilson because that's his real name, he knocked on my door and said, Jim, Ken's been in LA about 65 years, but he still has this Texas drawl. And he says, Jim, I think that Bob Carter in the unit above me, I think he went out of town and you must have left some garbage out or something because there's a lot of flies around his window. I said, really? I said, is his car here? And he said, well, yes, it is. Well, Bob Carter was too cheap to ever fly. So I immediately thought that this was strange. And Bob, I told Ken I'll look into it, but Bob was the only one in the building who had never left me a set of keys or a contact sheet for emergency contacts. And coincidentally, we were having our monthly HOA meeting that night. And so I went in and told the board members what Ken had told me. And I told them that I had left Bob Carter a voicemail, and I sent him an email, and I said, if by morning he hasn't responded, I'll get a locksmith and we'll open the door and I'll go in and check it out. And my friend Fred, the 82-year-old Scientologist on the board, who was actually my most sound voice of reason in the room. True. He says, you had me right up until the last part. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, look, he's dead. And he said, and you shouldn't be the one to go in there. He says, what if it's a crime scene? He goes, and even if it's not, this isn't what you should be doing. He said, we should call the fire department and have them knock down the door, and we should do it now. And I went, okay. That's what we did. And when the firemen got that door open, an overwhelming stench flooded the courtyard of that whole building and stuck around for a while. It was really fierce. And there had been an August heat wave just before this, right? The previous weekend. Bob was too cheap to run the air conditioning. And so I was told later that if he'd run the AC, we could have gone another couple of weeks without ever knowing. Well, the coroner came, took him away. And the next day, I had to figure out what to do now. I'd never dealt with this kind of thing, and I didn't know. And so I looked around online on the internet, and I found out that there are these services that come out and clean up when someone has died. I didn't know that. Now I did. And there are people that have to handle everything in a very professional way because it's toxic waste. And so they clean up after dead people. So I found a company, I had them come out, and these guys show up in hazmat suits. And they were nice, and they're just trying to make conversation, and they asked, how'd you find us? And I said, well, I was watching that TV show, The World's Shittiest Jobs, and there you were. And these were people who apparently didn't find me as amusing as I find myself. Anyway, Bob had died in bed, and they said they had to cut the part of the bed around where he died, and the mattress and the box spring underneath that, and the carpet below that. They said this toxicity, this decomposition just seeps right through everything, all the way into the floor. I said, well, why did you just get rid of all of it, just the whole bed stuff? They said, no, these toxic waste containers are really expensive. And so I did. So a few hours later, they were done, and I figured the worst is behind me, and I was soon relieved of that notion. When about 3 weeks later, I get a call from the county. And this guy from the county says, look, we haven't been able to find a next of kin for this guy, Bob Carter. So what we have to do is send a guy out to go in the unit and look around and try to find something that'll point us in the direction of who to contact. And the thing is, we'll need a witness to go in with them. And so will you do that? And I'm president of my homeowners association. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. So yeah, I agree to go in with them, and they send the guy out to look around. And when he showed up, we go in. The place is a mess. It's a shambles. I mean, like a hoarder kind of mess, but it wasn't garbage. It was just stuff. Stuff everywhere. You couldn't sit anywhere if you wanted to, and you wouldn't want to. Piled high up on the furniture was everything. Doors were off their hinges, leaning against the walls. It was strange. Behind the couch was a white sheet that had been hung behind the couch, and it was just bizarre. And I asked what we were looking for, and he said something that could tell us who to contact, like an envelope with a returned email address with the same name on it, maybe pictures. And he picked up some pictures, a stack of Polaroids. He's like this, here's some pictures. And this stack of Polaroids turned out to be all really big, fat, hairy, naked guys, except with like leather jock straps with like their dicks hanging out and stuff. And he went, oh my God. I said, you think maybe that's his daddy? And he said, we found boxes of home videos that were, I'm sure, nasty just based on the titles. And I know now why he never gave me a key to the unit. I mean, he had his own little porno studio going on, and it was right next to where I lived. I had no idea. I thought this guy was a lonely guy. Turns out he knew a lot of people. And at one point, the guy pulled a picture off the refrigerator and said, what about this? And I said, well, that's him. That doesn't help us. He said, no, I just wanted to point out we found a normal picture. So that in itself was strange. Then he pulls out another stack of Polaroids from a drawer, and he goes, oh my God. And I looked, and I said, well, what? That's no worse than the others. And he holds one up, and he goes, that's my boss. I swear to God. Truly. And I'm like, I mean, what are the fucking odds, right? Like, that's your boss, and you have that picture. I wish it was my boss, and I'd stick that in my pocket. Anyway, I said, if that picture were to disappear into your back pocket for a rainy day when that boss of yours is refusing you a raise that you so richly deserve, so be it. I walked away, and I don't know if he took the picture, but I hope he did. We eventually found a letter from Bob's sister. And so she was notified and came out from Appleton, Wisconsin, and I felt sorry for her. She was extremely nice, and I tried to help as much as I could. When she was cleaning the place out, She brought over several bottles of wine and gave them to me. He said Bob never drank wine, but he'd get them as gifts now and then, and she gave them to me. And in fact, a few days later, a friend of mine, Jeff, who always accuses me of being a lousy host, came over and said, wow, you're actually serving wine. Where'd you get the wine? I said, next door. He goes, next door? The dead guy? He says, this is dead guy wine? Oh my God, I don't want to drink it. And I said, what do you care? He's not going to drink it. I said, shut up and drink your fucking dead guy wine, you prick. So anyway, I'm actually a very good host, by the way. Let's put that myth to bed right now. Anyway, Bob's sister ends up selling the place to this Australian guy in his mid-40s, and he turned out to be a total prick. I mean, this guy, I've lived in this building for 24 years. We've never had one asshole until him. Then we had one, and it was him. And there's no need to provide examples, but trust me. One day the cops knock on my door saying they're doing a welfare check on him because I asked why. They said, well, some of his friends called saying that he didn't show up for Thanksgiving dinner. And I clutched my pearls and I said, oh my God. And the cop says, what? I said, he has friends? And again, another group who doesn't find me as amusing as I think myself to be. And so I let them in, and he wasn't there. Turns out, though, he was dead. What had happened was he had a heart thing. He wound up at the gym on the treadmill and dropped dead on the treadmill at age 49. I know. My writing partner said, he dropped dead on the treadmill at 49. Would he die of embarrassment? But anyway, everybody in the building said the same thing. They said, I'm not glad he's dead, but I'm glad he's gone. Except for Ron, the Puerto Rican guy who lives downstairs from me. He says, fuck him, I'm glad he's dead, he was a prick. I like Ron. Anyway, now Will lives there. He's a guy who is in a dead guy unit now, and he seems totally normal, really nice guy, but I just have to say, I'm not getting too attached.
Yeah. How much of that dead guy wine did I drink? Thank you, Jim. That was great. Surprised you're still the head of the Homeowners Association. All right, thank you. Our next storyteller is an actor, comic, and writer in Los Angeles. She wrote Bachelor, the unauthorized musical parody, which had a run at the Apollo in Chicago. She performed stand-up all over LA and recently appeared in 3 episodes of Platonic on Apple Plus. She did our show back when we were at Open Space and was a big hit, so I'm so glad she's back. Please welcome Richelle Mize.
Oh my God, how am I supposed to follow that? I feel like that should be the plot of Only Murders in the Building next season. When I thought of scary, creepy, weird, I thought of Jesus Camp. But everything I knew about sleepaway camp, I did learn from movies. I grew up in Phoenix in the 90s, and we didn't have summer camp in the woods due to both the 115-degree weather and also the absence of woods. So when my mom told me I was going to Christian girls camp in Illinois, I was thrilled. Okay, in the movie Parent Trap, Lindsay Lohan not only finds her long-lost twin sister at camp, but the experience helps her get her parents back together. I guess you could say my hopes were pretty high about camp's transformative power. The truth is, you guys, I was struggling. I grew up super sheltered, a Christian introvert, and going to public school in 7th grade felt like taking a test where I didn't even know what the questions were. I never knew what people were talking about. I was somehow always physically lost at school. My forehead was continuously flaking onto my desk because of the too strong acne medication I was putting on daily. My period was an unwelcome new development, and thick pads seemed to be spilling out of my backpack at the most inopportune moments. I don't know why I felt like I had to have like 10 on me at all times. My new braces were tearing up my mouth, and I was still being haunted by the recent memory of picking out my first training bra with my mom at Mervyn's. Oh, so bad. But camp represented new possibilities. I could reinvent myself, be welcomed, not rejected because of my strict Christian beliefs. And maybe, just maybe, I'd get to jump on one of those blow-up blobs that catapulted kids into the lake, like they did in the movie Heavyweights. Okay, so for some context, this wasn't just any Christian girls camp. It was sponsored by my church, the Apostolic Christian Church of America. Where are my fans at? No? Okay. You haven't heard of us. There's only like 10,000 people worldwide. Basically, they believe like the less fun you have on earth, the more fun you're gonna have in heaven, which seemed like kind of a gamble, which is a sin, so I don't know. It's not like Mennonite, but it's close. I like to call it Men in Light. Like women can wear buttons, but they're not supposed to wear pants, you know? Fun. Okay. You could only marry other church members, which, you know, really limited the gene pool. Baptism wasn't done when you were a baby, but was a decision you made when you were old enough to know what it meant. This was the process. You had to repent for your sins. You had to apologize to everyone you had ever wronged. Does it sound like AA? Kind of. And then you had to get fully dunked underwater while wearing white in front of the church, which is kind of like a Jesus-themed, you know, wet t-shirt contest. And then after that, you had to abide by these strict rules. I was not baptized because once I did get baptized, I wouldn't be allowed to dance. So I was holding out till prom, okay? I was like, hope I don't die before then and go to hell. You know, it was a risk I was going to take. Fingers crossed. So I arrived at camp, and I took a deep breath of the fresh mountain air. You guys, this camp was exactly like the movies. It had wooden cabins with bunk beds, a huge mess hall, and best of all, a blob. Okay, yes. At the end of the first week, we even had skit night. Our group did a dating game, except it was like bad people dating Jesus. Kind of a good idea. Kind of good. So I played a rapper, and like obviously like it's probably something I would be canceled for today, but this was 1999, so cut me some slack. I was going to do my best Eminem impression. The kids in my grade loved him, and my ultimate crush, Kent Roth, could even recite all the lyrics to The Real Slim Shady. Me, I was appalled by Eminem's language and his treatment of women. Anyone agree? No? Okay, let me give you a reference to some of his lyrics. This is from the song Kill You. Okay. Slut, you think I won't choke no whore till the vocal cords don't work in her throat no more. If anyone needed Jesus, it's him. Okay, so I sauntered on stage in a tight navy Abercrombie t-shirt, baggy jeans, and my hair tucked up into my beanie. Okay, and maybe it was because these girls hadn't seen a boy in a week, or maybe the spirit of Eminem himself entered my body, but these girls went feral, okay? I had a feeling I had never felt before. I was like, this must be like what Elvis felt like, you know, or like the Backstreet Boys, or like Eminem, I guess. So I slouched, I posed, I did some rap verses, I acted too cool for school. My cheek got stuck on my braces. I was filled with adrenaline, so I just ripped it away. My mouth filled with blood, and I just kept going because the show must go on. The audience went wild. I felt seen, celebrated, and accepted for like the first time. You guys, from that moment on, I was like a camp celebrity. Everybody stopped me to tell me how funny I was. People shouted at me across the path like I had done it. I was cool. Then the second week of camp, the vibe changed. The speakers really started hammering home the message that we were born in sin and needed to ask Jesus into our hearts, or we were doomed for hell. For a bunch of teenage girls who hated themselves, it was an effective message. Sure, the worst thing most of us had ever done was like talk back to our moms, but still, we felt bad. Okay, it was the last night of camp. This is real. The sky all of a sudden turns dark and ominous. It's this huge storm rolling in. The counselors are like, get inside! So we do. And we're huddled up. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Like, I can't die, haven't been baptized yet. And then the power goes out. We all scream. And our counselors who, like, looking back, they're like 16-year-old girls. They're like, everybody get in the mess hall. So we all gather in the mess hall. And I was like, this is starting to feel less like The Parent Trap and more like the horror film Friday the 13th. Not good. My friends and I, we huddled around a candle. And we were surrounded by our campmates in their own small circles. We couldn't help but wonder, was God punishing us for having too much fun? There was nothing to do. So we did what all Christian people do when they're hanging out together. Sing worship songs. Lord, the light of your love is shining. Sing along! In the midst of your darkness shine. Not a lot of Christians in the audience, that's cool. The words seemed extra poignant amidst the deadly, stormy backdrop. We were exhausted, worn down by weeks of sermons, and vulnerable after being away from our family so long. One girl started crying, then another. Soon, we were all wailing together, lamenting our sinful existence and the fact that Jesus loved us so much, but we weren't willing to give it all for him. We were crying in a truly pathetic way that only teenage girls can. I thought about the sinful pride I had felt the past week, walking around like I was all that, pretending to be a celebrity. And I wanted to go to prom instead of serving Jesus with my whole heart. I was no better than Eminem. Yeah. At that moment, I vowed to give my heart to the Lord and start the repentance process when I got home. Then the rain miraculously stopped, and we went back to our bunks. Like Lindsay Lohan in The Parent Trap, I did come back from camp changed. No, I didn't get my parents back together because they were very much still married, but I had made a new decision to get baptized. Next week, I would talk to the elder. In the meantime, I reconnected with my friends. I replenished my vitamin D in the warm Phoenix sunshine, and I felt the safety of my family. And you guys, I chickened out. I didn't want to get baptized, I wanted to wait. I wanted to dance a little bit more before I gave it all up. I'm thankful for the opportunity camp gave me to reinvent myself. It's a great life lesson. Oh my God, this is so cheesy. No matter who you are or where you are in life, you can always start anew. God, I hope so. Okay. My camp experience did allow me to go into 8th grade with some rap star swagger and, unfortunately, a passion for sketch comedy. I never did get baptized like I promised to do at camp. But I'm leaving you with this. If you find yourself swept up in emotions with a cult-like group in the middle of the woods during a storm, I'd hold off making any big life decisions. Thanks.
So nice. Nothing scarier, creepier, or weirder than religion. Let's be honest. Right? Thank you. That was wonderful. All right. Our last storyteller is the author of The Museum of Safekeeping, a collection of short stories which she adapted for the stage and produced this past July at the Autry Museum in Griffith Park, and it was wonderful. Some of the people here saw it. There will be more performances of Museum of Safekeeping in 2024, so you can talk to her about that after the show. Yes, it was. And we're so thrilled to have her back. We're always thrilled to have her back. Please welcome the lovely, the talented, and fantastic Marlena Nichols.
When I can catch the coattail of an idea and somehow manage to wrestle it down into my writing studio, I'm telling you, it's like one of the greatest moments of my life. And it reminds me of the same feeling that I had when I was a kid, and I was stuck in bed with 102 fever, and I was drinking endless Diet 7-Up and saltine crackers, and I would just wait for my mother to crack open this thick red book of stories. All she had to say to me was, "Once upon a time," or "In the beginning," and I was gone. I didn't need anybody. I didn't think about anything else. My head was just filled with like this mishmash of dragons and whales and broken hearts and shoes that couldn't stop dancing. It was all pure adrenaline and possibility. And that is what writing is to me. Now, I've been scribbling my own stories, for better or for worse, since I physically learned how to draw the alphabet. But something has changed recently. And I get to this point in the process, right, where I think I'm almost done with a story. You know, like those 37 rewrites are finally starting to kick in. And somewhere over my left shoulder, I hear the faintest whisper, "They're gonna kill you for this." And I shoot around in my chair. I'm trying to pinpoint like where the sound is coming from, but there is no one in the room but me. And the whisper comes a little bit closer, and it's a little bit louder, and it says again, "They're going to kill you for this." And it's the voice of my inner critic. It's not unfamiliar to me, but this is the first time that it has issued an actual death threat. Now let's get real. I'm not some writer, activist living in a totalitarian dictatorship. This is not Belarus. This is LA. Nobody cares what I write. No one's gonna read what I write. But it's not my first rodeo, so I have to get a little cocky sometimes when it comes to dealing with my inner critic, and I yell out loud to my empty studio, "Oh, yeah? Well, who exactly are they?" And my inner critic comes back and says, "You put this thing out into the world, and you will find out exactly who they are." Yeah. And that is enough to shut me down and stop me writing. Now, I don't remember having an inner critic when I was a little kid. I do remember having an inner cheerleader, and she loved me. And she loved everything that I ever thought of doing. The first piece I ever wrote was a piece called Candyland. And it was the story of a rogue band of neighborhood children who survive a nuclear holocaust only to find that all there is left on the planet to eat are toxic birthday cakes and Sour Patch Kids. Genius. So I share this with my second grade teacher, who doesn't read it, but gives me like a puffy sticker as for like an A for effort. I show it to my mom, who also doesn't read it, but puts it on the refrigerator with a magnet. No one is impressed with all of these early experimental narratives of mine except my inner cheerleader, who is all like, M-A-R-L-E-N-E-N-E-N-E, Marlena. Marlena, go girl. So by the time I turn 13, my inner cheerleader and I are working on my first and only novel called Critical Power. It was sort of like a Wuthering Heights for the Miami Vice age. And two things happen in quick succession. The first is that my father dies at the age of 49. And that totally kind of throws a monkey wrench into my idea and faith in possibility. And the second thing that happens is that my English teacher covers the first 30 pages of my handwritten novel in red ink. And she ends with the comment, "You have such a wonderful imagination. It's a pity you can't spell or understand plot." And I have to tell you that it is more than my inner cheerleader can take. And mortally wounded, I lay her out under the magnolia tree in our backyard, and I enter my first set of lost years. You know what they are. You had them where you watch endless sitcoms, you eat flaming Cheetos, and you try to convince yourself you are going to become a lawyer. Now, at 21, I fall madly in love with this Turkish guy who says to me, "I think you would write the kinds of stories I'd read." And I mean, I had no choice. So I would spend all this time like scribbling in libraries and cafes because I wanted to capture just like something extraordinary for him, and also secretly hoping that maybe my inner cheerleader would come back. So I show up at our favorite bar, and he sees me and he asks me where I've been for the last few weeks, and then he introduces me to his new girlfriend. That happens. How many writers and creatives? Like, I'm going to make this thing. He's going to fall in love with me. And then, where were you? But the new girlfriend sizes me up and immediately puts me in my place. Oh my God, are you a writer? That's so cool. You must have a lot to say. I mean, you have to have something to say to be an artist, right? So, like, what are you trying to say? I mean, with your work, of course, you know, but like just in general. Okay, so I don't get the guy. I don't get my inner cheerleader back. But somehow I walk away with my first real inner critic, and she's a mean girl. So every time I try to write, she's there in my ear. You actually like don't have anything to say, do you? Another set of lost years, Subway sandwiches and retail jobs. And what saves me, I don't even know what to call it, but it's sort of these soft moments of grace, right? When something makes me kind of look over here or listen to this conversation there, turn left when I'm supposed to be going right anyway. Maybe it's the universe, maybe it's instinct, I don't know. But it happens often enough that I start to run like smack dab into these ideas and stories and characters. And pretty soon, they are all following me home. And I try to explain to them, listen, I am not talented. I don't have anything to say. You need to find yourself another writer. But the thing is, they won't leave me alone until I actually write them down. And in this struggle with my own creativity, I kind of wake up to the fact that the stories don't give a shit if I'm good or not. They just want to be written down. And it's a bit presumptuous on my part that I think I need to have something to say when my primary job is to listen to what the story needs and to put these crazy puzzle pieces together. Now, I know that's a very esoteric kind of notion and not at all Los Angeles, but it's a thick enough kind of armor to absorb the blows of my inner mean critic, my mean girl critic, and it buys me like 3 solid years of creating. Unfortunately, inner critics don't really die. They just go into exile where they can have time to plot their comebacks. So I imagine my inner mean girl, like, she is totally not listening to me anymore, so I need to be, like, smarter than her, which I totally am, and I need to transform into, like, I don't know, like, I need to be a voice of authority, a voice that she can't ignore. And when my inner critic comes back, she's British. And she's very much, Is this it? Is your 3 years of work? It's a bit light, isn't it? No, it's not. So, all right, what's the plot? Is there no plot? Well, you must be so tired. I mean, so much effort. So many love affairs didn't happen. Locked up in that little studio. I wonder what would happen if you stopped writing for a while. Maybe we could try that. I wonder, just as an experiment, what would that be like? But of course, at this point, I'm too deep in to give up without a fight. So I yell out loud again to my empty studio, plot isn't everything. And do you know who else doesn't understand plot? None other than Emmy and Academy Award winner of the West Wing and Social Network and nominee for the Chicago 7, Mr. Aaron Sorkin. And my inner critic comes back and she says, oh, playing the Sorkin card, I see. Touché. Just curious though, is he your father? Uncle? Mentor? Share agents? Know you exist? No? False equivalent, isn't it? And then there are those more lost years. And it's this time it's just like yoga classes and failed cleanses. And then during the pandemic, when we all got trapped inside of our houses, I'm overtaken again by all of these characters and stories that apparently have just been waiting patiently for me to get over myself. And I write this collection called The Museum of Safekeeping. It's 26 stories. And I do it mostly by trying to agree with my inner critic. So when she says things like, oh, darling, haven't we written this before? I say, probably, and I keep on writing. She says, but do you think that you've been writing the same story your whole life? I say, probably, and I keep on going. And she says, do you think that you're always writing about endings because your father died young? And I say, probably. And I keep on writing. And it's this act of writing that sends my inner critic into exile again. Until a couple of months ago, where it showed up completely even more disembodied than normal to say, they're going to kill you for this. And I still haven't written Save This, but I haven't written the thing that's supposed to go out into the world. So I don't have a nice button to give you on this piece, except I keep thinking that there is something about creation and the act of creation that I hope is always unusual, because I understand destruction and I understand the colors of destruction. They tend to be blood red, ash gray, black dark, but creation is the thing that happens after the destruction. And so after the destruction of the critic comes the next thing to create. Thank you so much.
Come on up here, everybody. Come on. We all ride that roller coaster. The inner critic, the creative, the destructive. So hang on to that light. Thank you again for being here. And mailing list. And if you're interested in being a part of the show, then talk to me. And just remember, if you have a story to share, don't keep it to yourself.
Tell it!
Hang out. Thank you very much.
So great.